Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Turning Readers into Writers with me, your host, Emma Dhesi. I hope you are all well. Today, we're going to be talking about who do you need in your writing team? Because being a writer, whilst for the majority of us, the actual sitting down and writing process is a solitary affair. You may be one of those teams where you do work with somebody and actually you physically write the book with somebody. You literally co-write it with someone. But the majority of us do write the book by ourselves. You know, we might bounce ideas around with people. We talk about it. We brainstorm, run ideas past our friends, family, colleagues. But really, when it comes to doing the actual writing, it's us that sit down and do it as an individual on our own, either with pen and paper or at the laptop, or if you're like me these days, with dictation. But so you might be thinking, well, so I don't need a team. I don't have a team. It's just me that's doing it on my own. But it's actually not true. You do need a team, and probably the best analogy that everybody can relate to regarding this is thinking about a tennis player. You know, they are, for the most part, they're a solo sports person. They're on that court by themselves. It's them that needs to kind of have the strategy as well as the skill to be able to get that ball over the net in a successful way enough times so that they win the point, the game, the set, and the match. But behind that person, behind them is a whole team of people. So many famous examples of people who have just done the best, you know, who have broken lots and lots of records. But I'm thinking particularly of Djokovic. Right now, Novak Djokovic, who is conceivably one of the best players ever. And he's been very open and visual with the fact that there's a whole team behind him, you know, and it's not just, you know, Djokovic is at such a level now, no one is going to be able teaching him how to play tennis. That's not what they're helping him do. But there's everything else around that. So it's what food he's eating, what supplements he's taking, his training schedule, how and where he flies to, and when he needs to get there in order to allow himself to have the downtime that he needs to be rested before a match. All of those things around it, thinking about the interviews that he does as well, all the media and the PR around it, any merchandise that he's involved with, any documentaries he's involved with, anything like that. All of the stuff that goes on around the job that he himself does on the court, he has a team for that. And that's the same for us writers as well. So if we go to the very, you know, the big hitters, if we think of our Stephen Kings and our J.K. Rowlings, then they are, you know, they're going to be like Djokovic in that regard. They're going to have people who are managing their diary, who determine what interviews they will or will not do, the photo shoots they're doing. People in the publishing house are determining when their books are going to be published, what the book cover is going to be like, who's going to do the foreword for the book if there is one, who is going to do the endorsements, who is, let's think, who's going to write the blurb, who is going to get the reviews, make sure those reviews come in. All of those things around the actual writing of the book that the writer themselves do, there's a team involved in that. So that's at the very top. And then for us, we're not right at the bottom, but we're probably debut writers if we're in this audience and listening to this. So we are at the beginning stages, and our team is going to be a lot smaller. And we might not have someone who's deciding whether we will chat to Oprah or not, or be in the Bookseller magazine, but we still have people who help us put the book together, put that product together. And whether or not you like that phrase, product, your book, when you hit publish, it's a product. There's no other way of looking at it. When you put it out into the world, it becomes a product. And so we need people to help us make that product as good as it can be, and as appealing as it can be to the right reader, because we want people to read it. We want people to pick it up, read it, enjoy it, tell their friends about it, and spread the word, and hopefully make some sales and get some good reviews in. That's why we do much of it. At the end of the day, we want people to read our stories, either for pure enjoyment, or because we're looking to change the world, or because we want to make money. And there's absolutely no harm in that. Or even better, a mixture of all these things. So we need a team who are going to help us do that. Now, as a book coach, I would obviously say I think a book coach is a very, very important part of your team. My coach is a hugely important part of my team now. I have had a coach, I think, for the last year, and I so wish I had found somebody long before then. They've really, Sam Scal is her name, Samantha Scal. I think if you've watched my YouTube channel, you'll have seen an interview with her, and she's ever so lovely. So she's part of my team now, and I would not be without her now. That has been the best investment of my time and money so far, absolutely 100%. And I think a coach for anybody is hugely valuable, and a coach can come in many different forms. So I work with I'll write the first draft, and then I go to Sam with it, and we work on it, and we get deeper with it, and we really improve the draft and go from there. Although my next book, I'm hoping to work with her before I finish that first draft and go through that experience with her. But there are other coaches who will do that, who will start at the beginning before you've written anything, and will brainstorm it with you if you're a planner, help you come up with that outline for your book. And then work with you throughout the book as you write it and as it evolves and changes, and they'll be with you through the whole process. There are coaches that will come on just at the beginning and help you just do that planning and pre-thinking, pre-writing stage, which is just as important as the writing stage. And then there are people who will come on kind of nearer the end. So perhaps you've written a few drafts of the book. You've gotten it to be as good as you can do it by yourself, but you know that there's some bits missing. You want it to be better than it is. You can invite someone to come in, a coach to come on in and do an evaluation of that manuscript, and then work on that manuscript with you. Now, the key here is that the coach is working on the manuscript with you. This is a big differentiation between a coach and an editor, and I'll come on to the editor in a minute. But the advantage of working with the coach is that they're there as you're writing. And some editors will do this, by the way. I do know people who work kind of longer term with their editor, so their editor is working in a coach capacity as well. But your coach is there to kind of help you through the actual writing process, not come in at the end and kind of say where you need to go and fix things, but actually do that fixing with you and kind of hold your hand, guide you, look at the revisions that you're making, talk them through with you, brainstorm it with you, so that bit by bit you're really deepening and improving and texturizing your novel as you go along. I have just found this to be really, really powerful, really, really invaluable, and I learn so much every time I go through the process with my coach. Every call we have, I learn something new about myself, about my writing, about my habits, my traits, my what would be the word, my tics, my tells for my writing, because we've all got them. We've all got our own little idiosyncrasies, and so I get to know them working with her. So for me, if it's within your means, I say a coach should be the number one person on your team. However, I know that is not available to everybody, and so the next best thing is definitely your editor, particularly your structural editor or your developmental editor or your content editor. So that's the same type of editor, but you'd see them referred to in different ways. So structural, developmental, and content editor. Those are the three ones that I know, the three terms that I know. So those are editors who will come and read through your manuscript, and then they will do an evaluation for you. They'll tell you what they feel is working really well, but equally they'll tell you where they think you can strengthen the story that you've got so far. I really enjoyed working with my editor, and I have to say I did always learn. Every manuscript she read, I learned something new. It was a craft lesson in itself, and hugely invaluable at the beginning. Really well worth doing. And if you can't, if hiring a coach is not available to you, do not scrimp on the editor. Make sure that you hire an editor to help you with this, because not only will they help you with the current manuscript that you've got, but what you learn from that person, you'll take the learnings that you take from the first manuscript, you will take into the second manuscript, and you will already be up leveling your first draft. And then when your editor looks at the second book that you've written, you'll take the learnings from that and you'll put them into your third book, and again you'll up level the first draft that you've written of that book, because you're always learning from the editor. But the big difference here with the majority of editors is that they will evaluate the manuscript for you. They'll, as I say, tell you what they feel is working really well, and then they'll tell you where they feel you could kind of make the improvements. And they'll give you an evaluation letter highlighting all of these things and making suggestions. They will also kind of make some suggestions for you. And it all comes in the form of a letter. And then you are left to get on with it. So this is great. As I've said, it's such a learning. You will learn a lot from your editor. The downside is, though, that 9 times out of 10 you're left to then go ahead and make those changes by yourself. And for some of you, that'll be exactly what you need. You feel that you don't need more than that, but majority of you listening are first-time writers, you're debut novelists, you would want to have more than that ideally. So if you can, go with the coach. If you cannot, go with the editor, but go back to them if possible. So take the letter that they give you, go through all the suggestions that they have made. If you agree with the suggestions and you can see that they make sense, even if it niggles you, even if you're like, oh, darn it, I hoped that they wouldn't notice. I hope they wouldn't see that and ignore it, because it feels difficult and hard to do. Go back and have a look at them, and then work through all the changes that you feel are appropriate and that you accept, because don't forget that the suggestions that anyone makes, whether it be a coach, an editor, an agent, or a publisher, they are all subjective. They are all coming from one person's point of view. And so you've got to be happy with the changes and suggestions that person makes. If you feel that those changes and suggestions go against the heart of your story, against what it is you're trying to achieve with that novel, and it really doesn't speak to you, if you're in your heart of hearts, that this isn't a change that you don't think fits with your storyline or your character, then you are well within your rights and capabilities to say, I'm not going to take that change on. I don't agree with that one. However, often they're worthwhile taking heed of and thinking about. Some of them you'll know automatically. You'll know immediately, yeah, okay, the coach or the editor is right about that. I do need to make that change, go back and work on it. Sometimes they'll be a little bit less clear cut, and you get to kind of have a think about those, and you'll get a call with the editor, so you can bring these questions to your editor and get clarification on what they mean, so that you can then make a better decision about whether you want to accept the change or not. And then there'll be those others that you just absolutely know are not right. I have to say, for myself, I don't think I've ever had a coach or an editor come back with a suggestion that I disagreed with and knew and felt very, very strongly that they were wrong about it. there was usually some truth to everything that they said. And then it was up to me to kind of determine how far I wanted to go with that suggestion. But I've never had a comment come back that was so left field that I thought, where did that come from? Instead, there's always been a truth to it. There's always been what's the word? No smoke without fire. So there's been some smoke there. So then go through those, and if it's available to you, if you've got the funds to do it, I really do recommend going back to that editor to take another look at the manuscript and the changes that you've made, and to see what they say after that, and then implement any changes that they've suggested, then make any improvements that they've suggested then, and then you get to make a judgment call about whether can you afford for another round of edits. Do you feel that it needs to have another round of edits, or is it in a good place? Or, and this can be the next level, do you want to go for more of a line edit? So you want to employ a different type of editor, which is somebody who's going to be looking more at the sentence level of the story rather than the big structural edge, the structural side of the novel. Now, for a debut author who is perhaps limited with funds, I personally don't think that the line editor is an essential hire. I don't think that's an essential resource that you need to have in or part of your team in those early days. Instead, I would encourage you to reach out for proofreaders, reach out for beta readers who can pick up some of those smaller, really glaring errors and typos and things, rather than having because it's a big expense. None of these things come for free. It is an expense, and it's one that you can work up towards. You can write and publish a very good novel, and even query a very good novel without having had without having had a line editor in there. That is something that can come later down the line. So that would be the first two top hires that I believe that you should consider. First one being a coach, and the second one being that structural editor who's looking at the big picture stuff and making sure that your story makes sense, starting in the right place, that there's lots of conflict in it, that the narrative drive is there, it's pushing the story forward, that the stakes are high, and then that there's no outlying subplots that don't need to be there or don't come to anything and you can actually take out. And then also that the book, comes to a good ending. It comes to the ending that a reader of that genre would expect. Sometimes that's very open-ended. Sometimes it's very clear-cut what the ending is, and sometimes it's a happy ever after. So we want to make sure we fulfill those expectations and leave our reader feeling happy with their choice and they want to read your next book. So those are probably the two big ones that you would want to hire, whether you are going to go independently published or whether you're going to go to query your novel. If you're going to query, this is not essential, and again, this would be very dependent on funds for you, but you can hire people to help you write your pitch package. So that would be your query letter and your synopsis. They can also help you look for good comparables for your book, and they can also help you find the agents that would be perhaps a good fit for you as well. So that was something that is available. People offer out those services if you want them, and can be really, really useful. Again, it's like a masterclass in what you will need to do for your second, third, fourth book, etc. So that's well worth doing. But equally, you can go at it at a slower pace and just learn those things by yourself, and learn those skills slowly but surely. So that's if you're going to go down the traditional route. If you decide you're going to go down the independent route, then because you're becoming your own publisher, there are a few more outlays that you have to you have to make, unfortunately. But your books are going to be fabulous, so you will make the money back, don't you worry. But the third most important one then, so after the coach or editor, it would be a book cover designer. Because despite how the phrase goes, people do judge a book by its cover, but not in the way that you might think. Readers look at a book cover and very quickly make a decision they're not even conscious of about whether that book fits into the type of story they like reading. And if you haven't done this already, do go and have a browse on Amazon. I think that's probably the best way, looking on an online retailer rather than in the bookstore. Go and have a look at the top bestsellers. So say if you went to Amazon and you were looking for a specific type of paranormal romance, for example, and you type that in and you look at the bestsellers in that category, have a look at the covers and you will begin to see that there are trends and there are fads and there are fashions in book cover design. From the image, from the colours used within the image, from the font style that's used, the colour of the font, whether there is a tagline or no tagline, the sizing of the font, the sizing of the image, everything goes through phases. And we as indies want to make sure that we are keeping up with those trends. We want to be able to fit in with that trend, because when somebody is scrolling through books and they see your cover, they want to be able to instantly recognize your book cover as being a paranormal romance, or as being a domestic thriller, or as being a young adult romance. Whatever it might be, whatever genre you are writing, and you want your reader to instantly, stop the scroll and look at the cover, and they might not even be consciously aware that they're doing this, but they'll see the cover and they'll recognize that as being familiar to a book that they have read recently that they enjoyed, and they'll think, oh, this looks familiar, let me stop, have a little look at the blurb. So that book cover has huge power in getting somebody to stop scrolling, to kind of look at the image and decide whether they want to click through and read the blurb. So really worth investing in a book cover designer. And this there's a whole range of prices for this. You can spend as little as, I've seen covers, pre-made covers, pre-designed covers for as little as like $30. You know, you get what you pay for, it has to be said, but it's a starting point. And as long as it fits within the kind of genre conventions that you're writing in, why not start with a cheaper cover, and you can always upgrade later. But you can get decent covers for as little as kind of $30, $40, $50. All the way up to the other end where you are getting a bespoke cover. So you're hiring a designer who will ask for a brief. You'll provide them with a brief. They will come up with some design ideas for you, and then you get to work through those. And that can be up to thousands of dollars. And if you're looking for an illustrated book cover, it's more expensive again, because you're asking for a piece of artwork for your book. So there's everything in between. So there's some great covers out there at reasonable prices. I have paid, what do I usually pay? I now buy, I have paid for designers, and I've paid around the $600 mark for covers. But I actually now go to the pre-made covers that I can kind of take off the shelf. And I pay around somewhere between $80 to $150 for those, depending. And I think they're just, if not better. They're just as good, if not better. And you'd never know that they were they're pre-made. And the reason that they're so much cheaper is they're the designs that have been rejected by another author. So they've been commissioned and rejected by another author, but they fit really well within the genre I'm writing, and they've been designed by a really good book designer. And so I'm very, very happy to pay for something that has been pre-designed, and I just get to tweak it a bit, put in my name, the title, and any taglines or anything that I've got, and I can decide whether I want it just for ebook or I want it for ebook and for paperback. And also they'll offer kind of marketing mock-ups as well, and all that for under $200. I think that's really, really good deal. So there's lots of options out there. The companies that I like are Book Cover Design, Book Cover Zone, the bookcoverzone.com, and thecovercollective.com, and I will link to both of those in the show notes. Just write that down for you guys. Okay, so coach, editor, book cover designer. The fourth member of your team might be a blurb writer. Again, this is a skill that you can either outsource and ask someone to help you with, particularly for your first book or two as you're getting to grips with this new skill set, or you can do it by trial and error and by self-study. My first book, I did reach out to somebody to help me because I felt absolutely clueless about it, and so together we wrote a few different versions of the blurb, or the kind of the text that goes on the back of the book to tell people what the story is about. But it's something that I've been continuing to learn as I've gone along. When I revamped my covers, I did hire another company to do that for me, and that was a big improvement again. But the book I've got coming out later this year, I've written myself and then sought feedback on. So I've been learning as I've been going along too, and hopefully I will continue to get better at this the more books I write. So for yourself, if this is your first book, don't feel bad about reaching out for help. I think I paid $50 to somebody to help me write that first one. So it doesn't have to be terribly expensive. You can find someone who can help you for a reasonable price. There's things out there for most budgets. But equally, if it's something that you enjoy, go for it yourself. Practice. Look at the other books in your genre. What are the blurbs like for those? Do they have questions in them? Is there statements in them? Are they kind of open-ended? Do they leave intrigue? Look for the words that they use, the types of sentences, the feel and the tone of the book blurb, and try and emulate that. Look at the kind of descriptive words that you use, and make sure you include some of those. Again, it's trial and error, and it's always a question of learning and getting better and better as you go. So blurb writing, a blurb writer is possibly somebody that you would want to be on your team. Now, people that you definitely want to be on your team are beta readers. Without a shadow of a doubt, you want beta readers. And this can feel quite intimidating at first. You can feel very, very nervous about doing this at first. But there's a couple of ways you can find beta readers. You can do it through a number of online platforms where people say that they're, you can put the details of your book up on a website such as Prolific Works or Story Origin or Critique Circle, places like that. And if your book sounds interesting to somebody, then that person will kind of say, yes, I'm willing to read this for you, and tell you what I think about it. And they'll do that. Sometimes they'll do that for free, which is fine and great if you are just starting out and budget is tight. So that's the kind of upsides of using a service like that. The downside of using a service like that is that there's no obligation for the person to come back to you with their thoughts on the book. They may not come back to you in time, because even if you give them a deadline, they may not do that. You can't guarantee it. You're putting your trust and good faith in the other person that they will do it. So it's a hard one there. So you've got to take a bit of a gamble with it. You can also go to other sites where you can pay someone to do that, and so then it's often not very, very much. But then there's an implicit agreement there that you're paying them for a service, they are going to respond by fulfilling that service. So at least you've got more of a guarantee there that they're going to read the book and give you feedback on it. The other thing you can do is, and this is something I only suggest to people who are writing their first book. It's not something I normally recommend. Usually I would say avoid it at all costs, but I've been thinking about it recently a bit more, and I've been thinking about my own experience. And this is exactly what I did for my first book, and I didn't do it again, and I certainly don't advise anybody to do it after their first book, but which is to reach out to friends and family and ask them, will they read it? And you want to know that they're going to say that they like it and they enjoyed it and they're going to be positive about it. The reason I say to do this for your first book only is because it's scary, isn't it? It's that first book, and for most people that's a scary thing to share it with somebody, particularly possible strangers who may or may not like it. We want to feel good about the work that we're putting out into the world. So, choose selectively 2 or 3 friends or family members who would be willing to read it for you and say nice things. Now, what you're not going to ask them to do is give a critique on it. You're not going to ask them what they think of the storyline. You're not looking for professional feedback from them. Use them to pick up typos. Do say to them, please, if you find typos or things that are out of place, let me know about those. If there's any errors, any glaring errors, that's always useful. But don't expect too much from them. And again, know that they are people who will be doing this to you for a favour. They're not being paid for it. It's not part of, what they do. So there's no guarantee that they will do it for you, and you shouldn't expect them to or make them feel obliged. But if they're willing to do it and say nice things, then go for it for that first book. I remember reaching out to my mum and to a friend, and I reached out to both of them because I knew they were both avid readers. They both read widely, so not just in one genre, but across different genres. And I was kind of... obviously I was hoping that they would come back and say this is the most amazing thing, and they were very, very positive, but I did ask them to focus on, the main errors and typos that they found as they read, and then anything else they said fed back on, then that was a bonus. But I know that they wanted to be nice to me, and it's not their job to give feedback on these things. So I feel that it's a little bit hypocritical of me actually to be saying to other people don't do it. But if you can avoid it, I would recommend that you don't do it. But I understand that it's not always easy in those early days. And sometimes asking a friend or family member to read your book is that first step towards letting a stranger read it and towards putting it out on the public sphere. Because I know for many of you, that's actually really scary. Letting people read your work is hugely scary, and by taking that big step, that's a huge moment in your career as a whole. Thinking about the big picture, letting somebody else read it and possibly feedback and make comments on it, that's a big thing. So a bit controversial there, and as I say, just for your first book, a friend or family member. But that really, I think, is the team that you need at this beginning stage. I don't think you need any more people involved in your team right now. You need a coach or an editor. You need possibly somebody to help you write your pitch package if you're going to be querying. If you are going to be self-publishing, indie publishing, then you definitely want to be having a book cover designer. You're looking for beta readers. You may even want to pay for a proofreader, so someone who is being paid to pick up those little typos and those little errors and give their feedback. And then either way as well, you may want to, for your first book only, you may want to ask a friend or family member to read your book and say nice things about it. So I hope that's given you an idea of, that whilst writing is an individual game for the majority of us, on the back end of it, there's actually more people involved. And that's a good thing. I really want to impart to you what a positive thing that is, because you need to have outdoor, you need to have outside influences, you need to have outside people feeding back to you. You can't do everything in a vacuum, because then you're only doing this for you and what you like, rather than for your reader and what your readers on the whole like. And I want you to do well. I want you to get your book out in the world. I want you to find your readers, and I want you to make some money and sell some books and change the world and make people happy. And to do that, you need to know that you're giving them what they want. So that makes them happy, and then second of all, makes you happy too, because you know that you're making them happy. So it's a lovely upward spiral of reciprocity. All right, that is me for today. I hope that's useful. Let me know about your team. If you are writing your first book and you're getting towards the end, who is part of your team? If you are further down the line, if maybe you're your third, fourth, fifth book in and you're listening, thanks for listening in. Who's part of your team now that you're kind of more established and you've got a bit of a catalogue behind you and possibly more of a process in place? Who is important in your team? All right, take care for now, and I will speak to you soon.